What's up, everybody? Welcome to System Crafters Live. I'm David Wilson. We're back again with another Friday stream where we get together as a community and talk about whatever topic I've come up with for the week. And this is another one where I just kind of pull it out of my hat at the last minute, but it's a topic that is interesting to me. I decided to do something interesting to me today just because, it's Friday. Why not talk about something that I find cool? And maybe you'll think that it's cool too, because I really haven't looked into the topic today very much until just today, and I think it's pretty interesting. So we'll take a look at the Janet language in a little bit and see what we can learn about it. Let's have some news. Actually, before I get into the news, let me say hello to people who are here so far. I see on the YouTube side, kind of quiet. I see Cesar is there. Hello, Cesar. Let me see. Okay, I got the the live chat. Sorry, folks. I'm a newbie streamer here. I don't know what I'm doing. On the IRC side, I see Benoit, Glenn, Arnaud. Let's see, Fade, Alternate Ved, Jeff, Mike, and I see Big Edie joining. RetroPixel, hello. All right, glad to see you folks. I see that most people are over on the IRC side today, which is great because you actually show up on the screen with the chat messages that are up here are from IRC. So if you don't know how to get there, it is irc.libra.chat, the chat server network, let's say, and the System Crafters-live channel. Or just go to systemcrafters.net/live, and I've got a live chat embedded there. So also hello to Thomas, to Dominic, and to Hari. Nice to see you all. All right. So let's get into the news. Not too much on the news front today. The first thing I wanted to bring up for you Common Lisp fans out there is apparently there was a new SBCL release this week. I forgot who reminded me of this in the IRC this morning. Maybe it was Alternate Ved, maybe it was someone else. Sorry if I forgot who it was, but or it could be Cal. Can't remember. Anyway, there's a new release out of Steelbank Common Lisp, which is probably as a non-Common Lisp expert, I will say something that could be completely wrong, but my impression is that SBCL is the probably the most widely used and best Common Lisp implementation, at least the free ones that are available. There are others that cost money, and who wants to pay money for software? Like, what's the point? So I think it's just some minor improvements, but I just wanted to call it out in case anybody out there, like Fade, uses SBCL and wants to get the latest update. One thing I saw that was kind of interesting, which I wanted to call out, yes, I'll get fact-checked with Fade, that's true, hello Judy, is that there's a fix here for some ELF tool-related stuff by Shinmera. If you don't know who Shinmera is, that's Yukari Hafner, which is a well-known game developer, a well-known game developer who uses Common Lisp and also published an actual honest-to-goodness indie game called Candria in 2023 that's written with SBCL and shipped on Steam. So if you want to see an actual up-to-date, relatively recent game written in Common Lisp that's out in the wild, then go check out Candria. It's like a Metroidvania-style game, I think, action-adventure platformer type deal. Anyway, Yukari has been working on getting SBCL running on the Nintendo Switch to ship Candria to the Switch. So that's kind of interesting. If you like writing Common Lisp, maybe you can write Common Lisp for the Nintendo Switch. So, just consider that in your bag of tools. Is the video really choppy, or was it just whenever I was playing that video? Anyway, So I just wanted to point that out. I'm not going to go through the list of updates because we don't really talk about Common Lisp too much here, so I would not have many useful opinions on what's been updated. Just wanted to point that out because it's news. It's Lisp news. Yeah, just when I was on the site, the Steam website basically drags everything down. Hello to Peter. Yes, good looking out there, alternate ved. There's the trial engine, Shirakumo /trial GitHub. Okay. The trial engine, game engine in Common Lisp. So this is a pretty, how would you call it? Mature project, a full game engine written in Common Lisp. I actually have spoken to Yukari about this a little bit, and she's done some pretty interesting stuff in here. So if you are interested in what a kind of an ECS style game engine would look like in Common Lisp, I would say check out Trial. Kind of cool. That is the game engine used by Candry. Yes, that's right. Thanks, Alternate Vet. Dolce is also mentioning the Trial game engine. Yeah, I haven't actually used it, but there's a lot of really solid work around that. So I imagine anybody who wants to write real shippable games in Common Lisp, you should check out Trial. All right, hello Minas Mezar. So next on the agenda is the last 2 weeks I've been saying there's gonna be a new System Crafters video. Let me just explain to you what it's like whenever you have a 5.5-year-old and a 1-year-old home all day long for 4 weeks. Maybe you know, I don't know. Maybe you know what it's like. And maybe you've had kids home longer whenever you're trying to work from home. It's not so easy. Not so easy to focus. There's constant screaming, constant demands, constant hunger, crying, sleeping, wiping. So yes, there will be a video, hopefully next week. I'm not making promises this time. I say next week with a question mark there, because I'm questioning myself at this point, but it's in progress. It's gonna happen eventually. Nakatani says, I have a 5-year-old. He goes to summer camp. You know, that's a great option. Unfortunately, in Greece, in August, literally everything closes, and there are no places like that for kids. So it's fun, you know. If I look a little bit frazzled, it's because I am. Hello to Boo, nice to see you. Okay, so Bate says, when I became a father, I was a little surprised by the sheer volume of bodily fluids that involved handling. Yeah. We're not going to go into detail on that here. This is a channel about S expressions and not the kind of S expression that a child has multiple times per day. Don't read too much into that statement. Okay, so today what I want to do is take a look at an interesting language called Janet. I'm in the thumbnail, in the title, I call it a Lisp, but I wonder if it actually is meant to be a Lisp. We'll look into it a little bit, and I'll tell you what I mean by that. But it's a really cool project that I think it actually has some pretty interesting features and some design, maybe improvements, we could say, that would be pretty effective for writing all kinds of really interesting applications using a Lisp-style language. Janet seems to be directly inspired by Clojure and possibly Scheme to some degree. Definitely Clojure most. We'll get into sort of some of the syntax and libraries and stuff like that in a bit. You'll see that Clojure is a big inspiration there. But I feel like there is, yeah, Alternate Vet says, but there are no lists, exactly. I think there's some inspiration from Scheme here, obviously some inspiration from Common Lisp, but you know, obviously, whenever you look at the code, it'll look a lot like Clojure. That's fine too, because Clojure syntax is pretty nice. So the first thing that you might realize here by looking at the site is that in the first paragraph, it does not say the word Lisp. In fact, it doesn't say anything about parentheses or S expressions. Pretty much, if you search the site, the word Lisp does not show up until the editor support list. So basically the packages for editors for editing this. So really, this is a programming language that happens to have parenthesized syntax like a Lisp or like Clojure. It has a lot of features that are familiar to Lisp developers like macros. Also, tail call optimization, lexical scoping, and what was the other thing? They have continuations, not explicitly like scheme style continuations, but more like coroutines, or like you could have parallel stacks that are not running in parallel, they're just concurrent stacks, let's say. Fade says, oh dear, is Janet a syntax heavy language? A bit more. We'll take a look at it. I don't think it's that bad. Actually, let me tell you what I think. I feel like Janet is also heavily inspired by Lua. There's a couple reasons why, but one reason why I kind of feel confident in saying that, well, okay, there's two reasons, but one is more important. I think the author of Janet, Calvin Rose, was the original author or a significant author of Fennel, another language that we've looked at before, which is a compile to Lua language. So Fennel Lisp. Yeah, so backpacking, that's Calvin's username. Calvin is no longer involved with the project. Technomancy, Phil Hagelberg, who's well known in the Clojure space, has been the main maintainer for that for a while. But Fennel is a Clojure-looking language we've talked about on this channel before that compiles to Lua. I would imagine that being a person who has written a lot of Lua, because you have to write a lot of Lua to write a transpiled language from Lisp to Lua, some inspiration from Lua would probably sneak in to a language that is not a transpiled language to Lua. This is actually a language that is driven by a virtual machine. So kind of like a lot of scheme implementations where you'll have a partial slash compiler that will take the code that comes in and turn it into bytecode and then execute that on a virtual machine. I believe that Janet is also like that. It has, mutable and immutable data structures. So you can have mutable and immutable arrays, hash tables, strings, and it's kind of Clojure-ish in the sense that you have maps. You have, the curly bracket data structure where you have like a key and a value, etc. That's associative. So Fade is finding lots of things that he doesn't like here. Yeah, it's kind of a hodgepodge of features from different places, which is why it's kind of interesting. It's kind of why I wanted to take a look at it. The other really cool thing about it, or kind of a couple cool things about it, it's easy to embed into a C program. If you want to embed it in a program, there's two files. There's a C file and a header file that you just drop into your project. So if you want to embed this into a program to have a scripting language for your program, it's very easy to do that. There is a C interface for defining functions that get exposed up through Janet to use in the scripting language. So it's easy to do that if you want to. So like Lua, it's easy to embed, and it can be used as a scripting language in another program, a native program, let's say. The other side of that is there's a standalone Janet command line tool that can actually generate standalone programs from Janet projects. So we'll try to look at that in a bit too. I want to kind of like run through an example of that because I think it's pretty interesting. The idea is that if you have a Janet project, even if it has sort of native integrations like foreign function interface, or let's call it wrappers, C wrappers for Janet, or external libraries or anything, basically what it will do is shell out to the compiler and build your program, build all the standard library and everything into it so that you can ship that program separately. So if you want to distribute an executable from the Janet code that you write, you can actually do that without having to ship around a runtime at the same time because it is all built in. Let me look at the YouTube chat because Judy said something relevant here. Crux says, just look at the website and it kind of implies that hash tables are structs, mutable and immutable hash tables, table/struct. Yeah, so there's I think it's simplified that a little bit. There's two data types. One is table and one is struct. There is a difference between those two. Every mutable versus immutable type has a different name. So array versus tuple, table versus struct, buffer versus string, right? And it kind of makes sense. Alternate Bed says JPM is the package manager for Janet. JPM is a program that, written in Janet, I guess, that is able to pull dependencies from Git repositories. It stands for Janet Project Manager. It also has its own project definition format. Why do I find this interesting? Well, because I was also working on a scheme-derived language called Mesh, which was intended to do a lot of the same things as Janet. But Janet is much more mature, and you know, it's available. You can use it right now, and it won't crash whenever you do things that aren't expected. So I think it's kind of interesting to take a look at this and see if it's worth using for programming projects. It's said to be useful for, let's see, well, it's not here. It's a functional and imperative programming language. Runs on all the major OSs. Entire language is less than 1 megabyte. I mean, okay, fine. I mean, you can generate a small executable, which is pretty cool, I guess. You can also add Janet scripting to an application by embedding a single C source file in a header. Has a core library, an interpreter, compiler, assembler, and PEG, which is like a way to describe regex-like grammars, I think. Let's see. Anything else interesting? Built-in support for threads, networking, and an event loop. It has something that they call fibers, which is like coroutines. Garbage collection, obviously it'd have to have that. First-class closures. Direct interop with C via abstract types and C functions. Yeah, that's the C wrappers. Dynamically load C libraries. There actually is a foreign function interface that you can define in Janet at runtime. So we can actually form the calls to the C APIs without having to compile in a wrapper. At least that's the impression I'm getting from looking at the code. So that's pretty nice. It's nice to not have to actually compile something, have an extra compile step, because it means you have a greater chance of being able to interactively develop a wrapper for a C library. However, it is slower, I think, because you have to kind of like dynamically generate the C ABI invocations. So I'm not sure exactly if it's good to do that. It might be better to write C wrappers. Anyway, I'm kind of getting into the weeds here. It might be better to write C wrappers for a C API if you want something fast and a bit more reliable. Let's see, REPL and interactive debugger. Interactive debugger, I'm actually kind of interested to see because a lot of times you don't get really good debugging experiences inside of Scheme implementations, but if this one has a good one, that might be pretty useful. Judy says, probably better to just export to Janet from C than the other way around. Export to Janet from C. Yeah, it's not that hard. It's a pretty standard C wrapper interface, I think, so it would not be that bad. Brux says, a struct for me is a strictly structurally typed object. Names resolved at compile time into pure object offsets. No names at runtime, where a hash table has its keys known at runtime. Yes, I agree with that. Because record types, which are like structs kind of in Scheme, are the same way. You do have computable offsets. Table in this case may be that. In fact, there's a documentation page somewhere that goes into the performance characteristics of each of the data types. And they all say that they're big O of 1, constant time, which we'll have to take a look at that. I mean, if it's an array, I can see how, I mean, array makes sense. A mutable hash map, I'm not sure how that would be I mean, I guess it's technically constant time a hash table, but not really, is it? I mean, anyway, whatever. Export your projects to standalone executables with a companion build tools JPM. Okay, so here's a little code example. This is a 3-sum problem. I'm not a mathematician. I don't know what problem this is, but hey, here we go. This gives you a little look at what the syntax is like. Now, first of all, I don't really like the multiple defs here. I would prefer a let expression. There appears to be let expressions, so I don't know why they did the defs like this, unless this is more of a, oh no, there's no like recursive references between them, so it could have been a let. I don't know why they didn't do that. Maybe it's just an example that you can use def in the body of a scope. Okay. Typical looking for loops. That's fine. You know, I'm not a fan, but I guess it's probably a bit more convenient. Let's see. Get, I think, is the general accessor for associative data structures. Get and put and in. We'll see that in a minute somewhere. Yeah, put is here as well. It's pretty easy to return. I don't know if that's a table or a struct, but it's probably a table. Actually, it's probably a struct. We'll get back to that. And then they have, the general map functions, etc. So cool. We see that it's, pretty straightforward. Okay, alternate vet says @ means mutable. Thank you, alternate vet. Seems you have a little bit of experience with this, so you'll be able to help me. Hey, Gold An. Okay, so that's cool. There's a REPL built into the browser. Clearly, you can compile this with Emscripten if you want to do web-based games or applications, which is really nice to have. Then we have the Janet executable, which dumps you right into a REPL immediately, which is cool. I'm actually kind of interested to see what's going to happen whenever I start noodling around in there. Command line options, that's fine. There are some libraries for this. There's an HTTP server. I don't know if this is written totally in Janet. It would be pretty interesting if it was. So let's just scan real quick here. Okay, there's something called Mongoose. I think I've heard of this before. Is this some kind of embeddable HTTP library? C Mongoose library, web server, okay. Embedded web server, so that explains it. It's just a C library that is being wrapped for this circlet library, that's fine. And then, whoops. Okay, there's a Janet file here, circlet lib. That's pretty thin. I'm guessing that most of the magic is in this C file here. Not too much. Probably not a whole lot to put in there. Okay, cool. Judy says Mongoose is a pretty slim HTTP server library, single C+H file. That's cool. All right, so there's a web server. There's also a web framework. I don't know exactly what all it has, but it does seem pretty straightforward. Yeah, and you can have a, what do you call that in Clojure, where you have this sort of map style, hiccup syntax. Yeah, hiccup is a thing for Clojure. So we've seen SXML for Scheme, where you have S expressions that follow a particular format that then get turned into HTML or XML or XHTML, however you want to call it. Similar in this case. I think that this syntax is probably easier for a person to read and write than the SXML syntax, because you have to do all like the @ sign inside of nested lists, and it gets really messy. So this guy can be kind of nice. We're just going through a few different examples here to see sort of what is available. Then we'll get into the actual language itself. So not too bad. Everything is a function. Yeah, it seems like you can embed calls to functions and also general code inside of these forms, which is cool. It's all data structures in the end. What else? Bindings of SQLite, JSON and parser and encoder. There's a JLib library. We talked about Raylib a couple times recently. It's a really nice C library for game development. This is a wrapper for Raylib in Janet. So if you want to do some game development with Janet, you definitely could do that. This is a mostly C wrapper though. So if you want to go check that out, let's see, core. You can basically see that the all the wrapper functions are defined here, like the init window function, which is one of the basic ones that you have to call to get a Raylib project started. So the code to actually wrap things is not very difficult. In fact, it reminds me a lot of what I wrote for Mesh, because it's kind of the same concept. You just have the runtime know how to call a native function. It just knows how to call the C function for that, which has a consistent set of arguments for sure. The number of arguments being passed to the function on the Janet side, and then effectively the array or list of argument values that then you have to kind of read and handle correctly depending on the function that you're wrapping. Okay, so there's that. I'm sorry, let me know if the way that I'm going through this is completely nonsensical to you. It all makes sense to me because I've written an implementation kind of like this before, but Crux says the wrapper code looks like something a macro could generate if C had proper macro support. I mean, honestly, it looks like something that a Janet macro could generate to a C file with a kind of higher level intermediate language, which is kind of what Chibi Scheme does. I kind of like the way that Chibi Scheme has its C wrapper stuff set up. I don't like the fact that it's a separate build step. However, it works well, and you don't have to get into the nitty gritty of handling the values that are coming across the wire effectively, or coming across the boundary, and then it can add value checking and error handling for you. So it is a bit better to have things done that way, in my opinion. Benoit says, I would be curious to see how it compares to Babashka. Yeah, we'll have to look at the system interface to see how good that is. It mentions somewhere, maybe it's on the repo. What did they say about that? There was a different description I had seen. Janet is a programming language for system scripting, expressive automation, and extending programs written in C or C++. They should put that as the first line on the website. Because you're telling me, the first thing you're saying is it's a functional imperative programming language. Okay, what does it do? I'm not criticizing anybody here. I'm just saying, like, this, to me, gives me much more motivation to try it. Because that makes sense to me. It makes a good system scripting language, or a language to embed in other programs. It's like Lua and GNU Guile in that regard. It has more built-in functionality and a richer core language than Lua, but smaller than GNU Guile or Python. Yeah, I mean, it's kind of a cool niche to be in. Lua, you got to add a lot of extra stuff to it. Super embeddable, super flexible, and powerful and fast, but also I'm just not a fan of the syntax. Kind of pain in the ass. Yeah, the Guile is thick. We got way too much stuff in there. Also Python. There's a REPL for trying out the language, ability to run script files. Yes, yes, yes. Okay. Game of life implementation. So, you know, if you're used to looking at Scheme, this probably looks less syntaxy, surprisingly, than Scheme, because you can use like square brackets in places, and like let expressions are not quite as nesty. So it looks pretty clean. It's nice. It's different though. Judy says, embedding Python. Yeah, no thanks. Benoit says, this looks like Clojure. Exactly. I think that's basically that's the core inspiration, I would guess, for this. Here's a little example of Windows FFI. You can basically load up user32.dll and then bind to the message box a Win32 API function, and then invoke it directly without having to compile any C code, which is cool. All right, so how long was that? About 25 minutes. That's a decent overview. Let's actually start looking at the documentation, because that's the more important thing here. So the docs are pretty good, I think. Big E says, dumb question. This is not a dumb question. What does it mean to embed in this context? So let's say you have a program that was written in C or C++ or some other native language where there are no dynamic scripting capabilities built in. Like with a C program, there's really no way to run code at runtime. You have to compile it ahead of time. An embeddable language like Lua, or like Janet in this case, is something that you can sort of include into the application to give it the dynamic scripting capabilities, so that your program can load a script to do arbitrary behavior, user-specified behavior for any purpose. So you could consider JavaScript in a browser to be an embedded language, because you have a native program that can then be extended using a dynamic language that can be executed at runtime. Judy says it's like ELIS for Emacs. Yeah, that's a good way to put it too. So not a dumb question though, because we're living in a world now where dynamic, or runtime interpreted more or less languages are pretty common. So this is not something that a lot of people are thinking about, because you already have that ability. Greg says, well, we have some examples of Janet. Yeah, I want to write some code. We're going to see about doing that in just a moment. So if you want to install Janet, you can actually, Benoit says with FFI, you could link to WL roots. Yeah, you could do that, but I think it's, I know there's a lot of callbacks and stuff. I've seen somewhere in the docs that callbacks aren't so great. C callbacks aren't so great with Janet, so we'll have to see about that. Oh, if you want to install it, there is a build on GitHub for Windows. On GitHub, you can find a build of Janet for Windows, or you can use the Scoop tool to install that. Okay, ongoing support is dropped. So yeah, go to GitHub to download it. You can install it on Linux in a few different ways. Well, Looks like Arch has its package. They don't mention it here, but Geeks actually does have the latest version of Janet packaged. In fact, I have it pulled up here. If I go to Eat, Janet-V, it's 135.2, which is the latest version as of, I checked today. And it's in Homebrew as well if you're using Mac. So you can pretty easily get that set up. That comes with Janet itself and also JPM. JPM is not there. Maybe I do have to install that separately. Like I said, I have not actually tried it before. We're going to try it live now. Your first program. So how about we just start like writing some basic code here and see what happens. In fact, we could go into the REPL to do that. Janet, print, hello crafters. Let me know if you can actually see this. All right, so hello crafters and nil is returned. So one thing I did notice about this language is that there are 3 essential values. There's true, false, and nil. Personally, I've gotten so used to Scheme not having nil that it freaks me out to see nil in a language, because now you got to deal with 2 possibly false states. You have to deal with nil and false, but that's fine. I mean, that's pretty par for the course for Common Lisp too. So, okay, so that's printing something. No big deal. Defining a function. I'm not going to call it a procedure. I have trained myself to say procedure for Scheme, but I can't say procedure now because it's not. Use def-in, which is very Clojure-ish. And they use square brackets for the args. Is there not a number? Who knows? Fade says CL has only nil for false. Yeah, we need 1 value for that. See ya, Cal. All right, so def-in, foo, bar, print, hello. And I think you can use multiple parameters for this here. So I can just put bar in here. Let's see if I get that right. So foo crafters. Yeah, hello crafters. So that does work. So that's, pretty easy to define a function. Terse syntax. Then you definitely need a main procedure if you have a script. If you're running a script, basically, it does look for a main function to be exposed from the main file. Also, you want to have an arbitrary length. I guess this is a rest parameter for args, so that any parameters get passed in get turned into a tuple and then printed out. We're not really going to try to run that. They have stuff that's documented, or I guess documentation inside of the REPL. So if we were to type in def-in, apparently you can get documentation inside of the REPL, which is great because it means it's sort of self-documenting in a way like Emacs and also like Common Lisp Scheme as well. But that's nice. What did SRL says? At least nil isn't equal to the empty list. Yeah, well, I guess you're right. There is the empty list value in Scheme, but I feel like the use case there is much more orthogonal, and it makes sense. The empty list is the foundation upon which a list is built because it's the last value in a chain of const pairs. So let's see, what else? There was also something to say all bindings. What does that have to tell us? All bindings. It's supposed to tell us all of the bindings that are in the, wow, okay. So it's like a whole list. You could probably loop over that and print them all out, but it's sort of eliding the majority of the list, which makes a lot of sense. So we should print out every global binding in the Janet REPL. You can browse the core library API. Okay, fine. Syntax and parser. Unicode or ASCII encoded, okay. You mean loop, you mean map? Maybe. So, before Janet code transforms into a data structure, it must be read or parsed by the Janet parser. Janet's source code is homoiconic. Code is represented as Janet's core data structures, but it doesn't have const pairs. Thus, all the facilities in the language for the manipulation of tuple strings and tables can easily be used for manipulation of the source code as well for macros. Cesar says Janet is pretty fast. Can use it to make an API. Like, you mean like a web API? Maybe. I wouldn't doubt it, especially because it has coroutines. So long as you have a what do you call it? An HTTP server that uses coroutines, then you can do some concurrent processing of requests at a high speed. But yeah, I don't think that the one that they have is going to do that because it's a C library. Anyway. Janet is a parser rather than a reader because there's no code execution at reading time. Okay, so the no reader macros, it sounds like. This approach is safer and more straightforward, makes syntax highlighting, formatting, and other syntax analysis simpler. So you can't hack the reader like you can in Scheme and Common Lisp. That's fine. I mean, I don't really ever use that. While the parser is not extensible, in Janet, the philosophy is to extend the language via macros rather than reader macros. Okay, that's fine. I mean, I don't have a problem with that. True, nil, and false are all literals that can be entered as such in the parser. Well, what's equality? So I want to see what these values. Is it equal? Equal, false, nil. Oh, whoops. False. Okay, so, whoops, equal, true, false. Equal, true, nil. So they're distinct values, it seems. Does this mean the White House approves of Janet? I don't know. What does that mean? So let's see. Numbers, I mean, okay, fine. There's a lot of keyword usage here. It's very much like Clojure in that you have, you know, foo as a value type, let's say. I'm guessing keywords are interned. It must be to do constant time access on data structures. I would think. Symbols are represented as sequence of alphanumeric characters. Sure. Don't really care too much about the details on these. There's also something interesting called a buffer, which is not explicitly a string. This actually can be arrays of bytes, or treated as arrays of bytes as well. So no numerical tower. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, like, for me, numerical tower is low on my list of priorities in a language. I don't really care too much about that. All I need is just, you know, floating point numbers and integers. Boo says the White House went out with a message to use memory-safe languages in government software. Yeah, I don't think this would necessarily be qualified as that. I mean, I guess maybe a memory-managed language, dynamic memory management language, would that be qualified? I don't know. When they banned C a few months ago, yeah. Tuples are a sequence of white space separated values. And you can use either square brackets or parentheses for these. That's fine. Makes sense. Arrays are the same as tuples, but have a leading at to indicate mutability. I almost call that papaki, because that's what they call it in Greece. Because to them, it looks like a duck. I don't know why. Papaki is duck in Greek. Kind of funny. Judy says, let's see how far they get. Sees herself out. Yes. You don't have to see yourself out. We're all guilty of terrible puns in this channel. Okay. So, structs are represented by a sequence of white space delimited key value pairs surrounded by curly braces. So structs are the form where you have curly braces that do not have the at symbol in front of them. They are not mutable. There must be an even number of items. Any value could be a key or value. Okay. And then tables have the same syntax as structs, except they have the at prefix to indicate that they are immutable. So you can change tables, but you cannot change structs, which makes sense because in Lua, tables are mutable. Okay, comments are, okay, here's a big one. Comments start with hash. They do not start with semicolon. So get ready to change your comments. What's Clojure use? I've forgotten. Does Clojure use semicolon? I think the reason why semicolon is not used is because that's a splice syntax in Janet, which is pretty interesting. But I guess it's simpler than using comma at, like is used in other places. But anyway. Okay. Shorthand notations for functions. All right. Cool. They have their own grammar written as their PEG format. That's cool. Alternate says Clojure uses semicolons. Yeah, I guess there was, probably some reason why they decided to use semicolon as the splice character, bucking the trend on pretty much every Lisp that uses semicolon as a comment syntax. Yep. All right. So that's that. Special forms. We're not going to read through the whole docs. I know. Like, what I tend to do is read through the whole documentation whenever I'm learning something. I don't think you necessarily want to do that. So we'll just try to pick out the stuff that's interesting and move on. So we got def, which is just defining binds a value to a symbol. You can use the structuring in def to extract values from different data types. So array style destructuring or map style destructuring or even nested destructuring, which is cool. I'll always like to see destructuring because it saves you from a bunch of really nasty let expressions when you don't have destructuring. So I'm happy to see that. Def can also append metadata and a doc string to the symbol when in global scope. That's pretty nice because it gives you a way to give documentation. Now that is pretty common, I think, for define in other languages to be able to put doc string. But private is interesting. I guess it doesn't get exported from a module in that sense. Metadata would be ignored because MyDef is not accessible outside the do form. Okay, that makes sense. What is var? Similar to def, but binding set in this manner can be updated using set. Oh, okay. So def apparently is an immutable binding. Is that right? Binding made by def is a constant and cannot be updated. Yeah, that's different than scheme. It's more like Clojure because Clojure is trying to force you more into the sort of functional paradigm. I think Clojure has mutable bindings as well. I'm fine with that. I mean, I abuse mutable bindings quite frequently in scheme. It just tends to be convenient. It's kind of risky to do that, but if you're doing it inside of a, locally inside of a let expression, I don't really see what the problem is unless it's used by a Clojure somewhere. And yeah, Clojure, not Clojure, the language, Clojure. If you're doing changes to bindings, I guess you have to do that. That's kind of the point with closures in scheme is that if you create a procedure inside of a closure or inside of a scope that creates a closure, then that procedure should be able to change the value of the external binding. So, Nakatani says, I think Clojure is mostly immutable. Yeah, I think it's sort of the default is immutability, or at least, guiding you toward that. Okay, so we got var, we got lambda functions effectively with fn. Clojure with an S, yes, that's right. I should probably say that. We have do, which is basically like begin or prog in, it seems. Execute a series of forms or side effects and evaluate to the final form. Quote, if expression, if true, if false. Now this is interesting. I guess if you don't provide, okay, if you don't provide the false path value, it evaluates to nil. If nil, print 2, okay. I'm okay with that. Yes, Judy. Not to be confused with Clojure or Closure. Splice special form is an interesting form which allows an array or tuple to be put in another form inline. Now, one interesting thing that I saw while reading some Janet code earlier is apparently you can do this outside of the scope of a macro. You can do this in normal expressions, which seems pretty unusual to me. Okay, it only has an effect in two places: as an argument in a function call or literal constructor, or as the argument to the unquote form. So normally you would see that in unquote. For those of you who don't know what splicing is, when you quote an expression in a Lisp language, like Common Lisp, Emacs Lisp, Scheme, quote is kind of like it turns off evaluation for all of the values that are produced by the reader in that expression. So whenever the reader is going through a file containing S expressions, what it does is take that text of the code and turn that into basically a big tree of values that are nested lists, because that's how the code is being parsed, is being turned into lists of values. And then it gets evaluated. Now, if the runtime evaluates the code and then reaches an expression that starts with the quote symbol, it just stops evaluating it and returns the whole thing as a value. So it already has that value, it just returns it as a value. However, it may have to go through that whole expression to look for something called a splice, which is basically a place where you want to evaluate some sub-expression and have the result value of that be inserted into that larger quoted expression at that location. So here what they're saying is that the normal way that works for most Lisp languages is here as an argument to the unquote form, because you're unquoting something to get the value out of it, let's say. And then also as an argument to a function call. So I think the reason why this works is because it is more than likely a stack-based virtual machine, and it will just evaluate the expression and then push all the values that list into the stack as arguments to the procedure or function that it's going to call, and then just calls it. So it kind of makes sense that would work. And it's kind of like an alternative to using apply, right? I don't know if Janet has apply like Scheme has, or like funcall works in Common Lisp or Emacs Lisp, but it looks like this is an alternative to apply. Akatani says they changed the comment symbol so they could shorthand a function. Seems kind of wild. Well, they decided to use a different syntax for splicing than is normally used. SRL says, seems heavily inspired by Lua overall. This is related to unpack, which is a procedure in Lua or function in Lua that does something like this. Yeah, it definitely is heavily inspired by Lua. Okay. So that's cool. While break, you can break out of a while loop, which is pretty, I mean, okay. This is like an escape procedure in a way. If you are dealing with continuations in Scheme, break is kind of like calling the continuation value to just jump out of the whole stack. But they kind of wrapped it in a nicer syntax that is, easily translatable to from other languages, let's say. Set, no exclamation point on mutating procedures or functions, like unlike Scheme. I guess set F, etc. in Common Lisp do not have exclamation points, so that's kind of a Scheme only thing, so you don't see a whole lot of exclamation points. I kind of like the exclamation points, honestly. I also like the question marks for predicates, but that's just me. 1 second. Let's see. Back to the chat here. So yeah, quasi-quote, unquote, no problem. Numbers and arithmetic, don't care. Let's see, comparison operators, bindings, def and var, flow. What do we got for flow here? Built-in primitives, okay, if expressions, no problem. Functions, strings, keywords, symbols, looping. Fade says CL uses the convention that mutating operation is prefixed with an N. Okay, didn't know that. Let's see, iteration, loop. Is that more like a tail recursive thing? Let's see. Where is it? Loop macro. Okay, just loop macro, no problem. Let's see, all right. Macros, let's take a look at macros real quick, just out of curiosity. Def macro, okay, pretty usual stuff. Def in one name args body. Yeah, this is the parameters to the macro. There's nothing special about these names. It's just the names of the parameters of the macro. Return a tuple. I'm guessing you could quote this. You return a tuple with all the stuff in there. Yeah, they could have probably backquoted some of that stuff. Here's another example of that where they're using backquoting. Okay. Standard stuff. You can macro expand. Accidental binding capture, so unhygienic macros. Probably has something like gensem, I guess. let's see. Yeah, just get to it. Okay, gensim. Fine. We have gensim. We can define local symbols that are bound to generated symbols that are known to be unique, where you don't have the value capture issue, and then you can kind of use those. Now, obviously, that's super ugly, but any common Lisp programmer who's written a lot of macros knows how to do this. Or Emacs Lisp even, because def macro is pretty standard. I guess even Clojure has that, right? Okay, so pretty standard stuff. Data structures. I don't know if we want to look at that a little bit more, or if we want to just start like trying to write something. Yeah, here's the stuff that I was talking about before. So we have this or a couple tables that make some distinctions between the data structures that are built in. So we have indexed data structures like array and tuple. Array is mutable, tuple is immutable. Dictionary, which is table or struct, mutable versus immutable. Bytes, which are buffer, which is like, you know, a byte array, or even it could be a string that's mutable, versus an actual string like a symbol or a keyword, which is immutable because they're probably interned and you can't change an interned string. See a fade. And when I say interned, what I mean is the string is kept in a special table in the runtime, which makes it unique. You can refer to it by its memory location versus by comparing string contents directly. So it makes it much faster to use it as a key to a dictionary or hash map. Yeah, everything's constant time, they say, for access, insert, delete, etc. I'm not sure exactly how, but you know, array, obviously, array or tuple, you know, it's linear memory. You're putting values in, right? Table, I guess, because it's a hash table, more or less constant time. All right. And get and put are how you get or put things in any of these data structures. And then the in function is how you check for existence. Okay? Okay. Quickly, I want to just kind of scan over what's in the, well, okay, there's a few things. Fibers, which are the asynchronous programming, basically coroutines. You can handle them directly. I don't know if there's a way to kind of like, let's see, result, resume F. It will resume until it stops. You're kind of doing it manually here. Is there not a, let's see, try error 1, print got error. Does try like run? Kind of weird, actually. Because you have to kind of handle the fibers manually. So you would need some code that is actually doing the scheduling for all this. That doesn't have a way for you to hand that off. There's no syntax, it seems, for handing that off to the runtime. That's okay though. Maybe it's what you want. Judy says that the Janet abstract machine is probably a fancy name for the VM. Yeah, definitely is a fancy name for VM. All right. Let's see. What was it? Where was that at? The Janet abstract machine. Compiler converts Janet data structures to this bytecode, which can then be efficiently executed from inside of a C program to understand Janet bytecode, blah, blah. The stack equals the fiber. So a coroutine is a stack, a single stack. You can have multiple stacks that are being interleaved on one thread, one OS thread. You can run Janet on multiple OS threads. Each OS thread has its own state, let's say. I don't really know if it's possible to communicate between the OS threads. It may not be that important, but at least in a single thread, you can have something that is a bit more concurrent. Concurrent meaning that it's not just a straight line from start to finish in the program. There could be other lines of execution that are being switched between, kind of like lightweight threads, let's say, coroutines. So the runtime is built on this, it seems, to kind of use switchable stacks. Oh, the event loop. Is there a way to have an event loop? I see. So pending tasks, while not empty, def, root fiber, wait for next event. Okay, so there is an event scheduler that you can use with... Okay, cool. That's great. So it's kind of like... Go a little bit. Not really. Communicate between tasks. Okay, you have channels here too. Streams and channels. Both instructions work as FIFO, first in, first out. You can send any kind of data through the channel. Communicate by sending any Janet value as messages. Only work inside a thread. You cannot communicate between threads, processes, or over the network, but that's just because this is a channel. It's not a socket. All right. Streams actually are wrappers around file descriptors and operate on streams of bytes. They can communicate across threads, processes, and across the network. I wonder if they are synchronized. If they are, that would be pretty useful. SRL says, does Janet have Clojure's callable keywords? It does seem so. I've seen that actually. Channels are based around a queue abstraction. So that's cool. They have channels built in. That actually kind of interesting. Streams let Janet do I/O without blocking and provide a similar interface to files. So there's a lot of stuff in here. Kind of some modern features for a Lisp, especially a Lisp that you can embed into an existing program. Usually these kinds of things need to be added in as like separate libraries or kind of heavyweight libraries that need to be loaded as part of a standard library that needs to be on the system. So the fact that you have all this stuff kind of built in is pretty nice, I think. Okay, supervisor channels. Okay, we don't really care too much about that. Multi-threading. I'm not gonna look at multi-threading. So, okay. That's an hour of talking and showing things. Maybe we should try to write something. So what should we write? What did I put in the notes? I wanted to check out the module system or how products are described. Yeah, Benoit says a lot of inspiration from Clojure. Is definitely Clojure-ish. Making a standalone application, simple programming using JLib. I mean, we could try using JLib. It will give us an ability to take a look at a few different things at once. I would like to compile a program using JLib, like a standalone program. If I can make a game using Raylib and have it just be a standalone C program that I can ship to someone, that would be pretty appealing to me. So we might try that to start with. So where is that? Do I have JLib still pulled up somewhere? Backpack in JLib. All right. Oops. So use JLib. Clone the repo with submodules or use git submodule. You no longer need to put any dependencies on your system. Auto detect and build right out of the box. You can use JPM install. Question is there a way to express that as part of the project format so I don't have to... Let's go to the JPM docs. So I don't have to actually pull it separately. All right. So first of all, I have to actually get JPM on the system, it seems. Okay, JPM is not in the Geeks package repo. That's no problem. Let's go over to eat here. I'm going to cancel out of this. Excuse me. All right. I'm going to pull down JPM. JPM is in this folder. It says to use Janet bootstrap.janet. I don't know if I want to use sudo for that. So Janet bootstrap.janet. Let's just see if it works. Permission denied. I don't want to go to lib, dude. So there's another way to build stuff. There's like, I need JPM to build the JPM project. It's weird that JPM is not included with Janet on Geeks. Seems like it would be needed. Use a prefix. Can I do that? It's prefix equals, right? Is that it? So let's say ls paw. It's like local. Whoops. Local lib. Yeah. Might cause issues with the Geeks Janet install. Maybe. All right. So prefix. Prefix equals home David Will dot local slash lib. This may be a huge mistake. We'll see. And then what was that? It was Janet bootstrap.janet. So Janet Bootstrap.janet. Why did it not like that? Export prefix. Ah, okay. Thank you to Omar. Let's see if that helps. Let's see, echo prefix. Okay, so do I want to export that here? Prefix. Interesting that it's checking it explicitly. All right. Alternative is linking to an issue. So Janet JPM issues. Issues. 92. JPM breaks its launcher script during Bootstrap. Is this new? Yeah. Alternate ved. Hello. In order to have Janet H, I need to install Janet develop package. Okay. So you've already seen this alternate ved. Or something similar. Well, that seems like the end of the stream. No, I'm just kidding. All right, so what's the best way to handle this issue? Should I try to use a distro box? If I do that, though, I don't think I'll be able to run applications. So the kind of applications that I want to run anyway. So let's see. Either local install Janet with JPM, or local Janet install with JPM, or try to match prefix with how Janet is installed by Geeks. I don't think I'll be able to do that because it's on a read-only partition. Let me see. What if I create a bogus root folder? Does it need to be somewhere under the roots file system? It wouldn't make any sense for it to do that. Sorry, folks, 1 second, please. All right. Take advantage of how portable Janet is. Just install the binaries. I don't know if that's going to work, is it? So let's see. Is there a release here? There's releases. I don't know if there's any binaries here. What about the Janet binary itself? I would like to see if it's statically compiled. I kind of doubt it. So Linux. Okay. So let's see. Go to downloads. And then Janet. What? That's interesting. Oh, there it is. Okay. Yes. Huh. What is it? Did I download the wrong one? No. Oh, there's a folder already. What the hell's going on here? Janet, there's no JPM here. I'm curious though. Yeah, no such file or directory. All right. So yeah, we were having a little bit of a trouble here because of the current bug. I don't know, is this a new thing or is this something that has been around for a while? Do you know, alternate ved? It's still a rough edge. Man, it's kind of like a key aspect of this project though. You kind of need that to deliver on some of the promises of the project. So, hey, you know, what can I say? Nobody can use mesh, so I can't really criticize for things not working perfectly. Let me go back to the issue. Let's see. It's on July 21st. What is this? They kind of bootstrap themselves. Can you do a non-root install? I mean, that's what I'm trying, isn't it? Non-root install. Let's see. So Janet docs index. Let's see. That is in the index page. Whoops. Build and install Janet to a local or temporary directory tree instead of default. Set the prefix environment variable while building and installing Janet. Okay, so I can go build the whole thing myself. Prefix home local, make J, make install. Okay. I don't have a problem with that. And I imagine that the build of Janet itself is going to take no time. So how about we give it a shot? Let's clone this sucker. No. Do they not have SSH as an option on here anymore? What kind of garbage is that? Okay. Go back to eat. Let's drop in here. Git clone. I need to learn to type. Git clone. Probably should have done depth 1. CD Janet. I don't have make here, do I? Nope. Great. Let me exit out of this Geek shell and then add that to my manifest. Make. I don't know what else I'm going to need here. I'm not using pure, but I do need make. Okay. It says... Okay, export prefix equals... Sorry, folks. I mean, we'll get this working in a second. Local. Okay. All right. Make -j. Oh, oops. Go into Janet folder. Make -j. CC command not found. All right. CC equals GCC. Let's see if that actually works. Are you kidding me? Is that right? Whoops. Forgive me for not remembering how to write aliases. Alias, does this work? What in the hell? I forgot what to do in Geeks to get CC set up correctly. Wait, what? Okay, CC is linked to GCC. Why is it complaining? You can try Nix packages. Yeah, maybe. If we run into too much trouble here, might have to. I would like to get this working though. I have no idea why it's not actually working. Make, is there a way to set a define and make? I thought CC equals GCC make dash J. Is that right? Oh, I'm an idiot. Okay, I forgot. I forgot, people. I'm sorry. We got that. Make install. Once this finishes, I will go back and point out what I just did. Okay, it looks like it worked that time. I use CC equals GCC make dash J just to set that to GCC explicitly, because make does pick up that CC environment variable to be explicit about which tool you're using for compiling. So that's what we did. Make install. Let me see. Cannot create temporary cache. So it wants to throw some crap in ld.so. Okay. You can ignore this error. Cool. Maybe it's good then. Let's check in local then. Local bin. I see Janet in there. Cool. Great. Make install JPM Git. Make install JPM Git. Let's also do CC. Come on. CC equals GCC make install JPM Git. Hopefully that works. Okay. I believe it's there though. So if I were to echo path, do we have my local folder, local bin? I don't think it's in there. So path equals path colon local slash bin JPM. There it is. Okay, finally we have JPM. What's next? What's next is trying to get where is it? JLib install, but I want to see if I can do that with a project file. That's in the JPM docs. Building projects with JPM. Project file, declare project. Okay. Dependencies. Excellent. So let's do that. I'm going to drop back down. Make dir JLib test. I don't know. cd JLib test. Now this is going to be a project.janet file. I'll paste this in. I've already got the Janet mode installed. This is from the, I'm guessing Melpa. I have Janet mode installed. So we have syntax highlighting and Emacs. Name mylib. This is the JLib test project. Okay. Yeah, whatever. Library that does things. Dependencies. I want to put in the repository for this. So Janet Lang / JLib. Okay. And I think there's a JPM deps. Clearing a project, creating a module. Okay. Declare source. It's like a distributable module, it sounds like. Native module. Executable. Maybe that's what I want. Declare executable. How does one do this? Is that in the same file? Oh, okay. So these are additional. Is that right? Oh, really? JPM new project name? All right, let me try that actually. Me. Game. There we are. Okay, so we have some stuff in here. Cool. Project.janet. Great. JLib test. Oh, this needs to be cleared out. No, what the hell? That is not. That's not right. It's got the old file stuff in there. There it is. Okay, whatever. Oh, new exe project? Man. Got all the good stuff there. Okay, so we do need that JPM deps. Cool. Declare project, declare source. Let's back up 1 second because I screwed that up. Wait a second. cd ref jlib test. Now we're going to say JPM new exe project. Jlib test. Sure. Cd me game. Cd jlib test. Now JPM deps. Sure. Let me grab the dependencies list here because we do need that. And I'm going to go to the correct file, which is under jlib test project.janet. I think that goes here, right? Dependencies for this project. Get rid of the unneeded parenthesis. And then back over to the shell. No, not eShell. All right, so cool. We're pulling down JLib. It's cloning it to a local folder path. It's got some little cache. Cloning raylib also. So it's going to build everything in together, it sounds like. Pinmax says the buffer is in the old directory you erased. No, actually is in a different directory because I screwed up the creation of that file. Put it in the wrong folder. So that's why we still see it. Let's give that a second. All right, let's see. Sure is taking some time. I don't know if it's like cloning the entire history of the raylib project and we're just sitting here waiting for it to clone. Sounds like exactly what I want to be doing with the time we have left. Come on. No, build fail. You know, I don't actually have, R models no such file or directory. What are these files? Oh, do we have the same problem again where CC is not getting picked up? CC equals GCC. Yeah, okay, so it's the .o file. So it's expecting something to be compiled, which is not being compiled because it's not executing the compiler correctly. Export CC equals GCC. I don't think this is going to work, is it? Oh, crap. I think it has a problem trying to execute CC. And I'm wondering if there's like a... they're spawning the process and the environment variables aren't going along for the ride or something. I mean, it's not that bad. Dude, Geeks always throws a wrench in the works, so we can't really blame this on JPM. I think that, you know, JPM probably is making pretty fair assumptions for most Linux users who are not using something like Geeks. JPM-CC, is that okay? Cool. Let me see. JPM help is CC a come on, really? CC. Oh, thank you. All right, so let's do that again. JPM CC GCC. That's 2 dashes, not 1 dash. All right. Oh, come on, man. Wait. Invalid configuration option expected string got true. Do I need an equal on that? Okay. There we go. This is compiling now. Thank you, Alternate Ved, for your experience. I appreciate it. It's helping a lot. Just waiting now. I'm not sure exactly what it's building. Must be all of the related stuff. Okay. Build fail. I'm guessing we need some other dependencies in here. I think that I need to... All right, let's add something else to Geek Shell. I'm going to add capd raylib. What the hell, dude? Hello? Ray. I'm trying to get the development dependencies of raylib pulled in, because that's what's going to help with this. And my shell prompt is eating itself, raylib. I'm just going to write it like that and hope that it picked it up correctly, because I have no control anymore. It's doing something. Probably pulling down the libraries now. That's okay, because I think ultimately we will get somewhere. But as we, see pretty much any time that we try something new in the channel, there's always a number of issues to go through first. And I take you along on this journey so you can see the joys of trying to learn new things, because it's not easy for anybody. And to my surprise, we're installing cups now, which seems extremely relevant to a game and graphics library. Is there a print function in raylib that prints the screenshot to the printer? Is that what's happening? Seems a little bit overzealous. And, okay, pulse audio makes sense. I'm not going to complain about pulse audio. We're almost done. Guile Fibers. Geeks advertisement. This channel is simultaneously advertising Geeks and assassinating the character of Geeks. What can I say, There are a litany of problems that you will run into as a Geeks user, and you see me cope with them regularly here. When it's just me on my own computer, it's fine. But whenever people are watching over my shoulder for 2 hours, struggling with Geeks, it's not so fun. Trebla, hello Trebla, said, I also had a heck of a time getting JPM set up on Windows before I swapped over to WSL, so I'm with you there. Yeah. They need to get that polished up, because JPM seems like a super useful part of this project. So having it be solid would be very nice. And I also think that JPM should be part of the Janet distribution. It should just be there, It shouldn't be a separate thing. Maybe that's because it's still in development. They don't want to include it yet because it's not fully stable, but it really needs to be there. Okay, now we can probably run this. I need to get back into the correct folder first. Go into jlib test, then run jpm ccg. I'm sorry. Oh, I need to re-export. Here we go. Okay. Let's see what happens this time. Maybe it will actually compile and have the necessary dependencies. That was an error. We may have to use a simpler example, which I'm fine with. Like, this is a kind of a practical example to kind of try to call out to a native library, but I think that we're going to pull the plug, because I don't want to waste time trying to make this work whenever something simpler could be doable. So, what might be more interesting is to try to use some of the built-in libraries I don't really want to go into the coroutine / eventing stuff because that's going to be a little bit too complicated. But what else do we have in here? There's some HTTP built-in stuff. I can send requests, it seems. That's pretty cool. JSON, math. Is that part of the standard library, though? I thought that was something that you actually had to pull in as a dependency. Oh, what is Spork? Okay, Spork is an official contributor library as well as a collection of various useful utilities. So apparently those are all independent libraries that can be installed. Okay. NetRepl, can you REPL over socket? That'd be cool. Connect to REPL server, okay. That's nice. Object-oriented programming. Okay, so you define a... I see. This is very Lua-like, I think. Basically have a struct. Oh, it's one package? Okay. I thought those were separate, though. Like the JSON package, it seems you can install that separately. So you define a struct that has fields with values and also keywords that are bound, or not bound, or they're mapped to functions with a self parameter for the object and the message itself. And then you can define a new object with like an overlay map and set the prototype on that based on an original object. So you're literally creating new classes. Is that a class or an instance? It seems to be an instance. Okay, so an object is it's an object prototype. You have a starting state effectively, and then you create a new object that is based on the prototype of the original object, and you sort of have something similar. And then once again, we see, or someone asked before, who was that who asked before? Was it, okay, you do need a JPM install Spork. I see. Thank you, Over William, in the YouTube side. SRL, I think? Who asked about that? Anyway, keywords can be used as a calling expression, let's say. You can say you can use a keyword to call a method on a class through this. So it seems to be the case. Yeah, it sort of syntactically sugary changes that keyword to a get car, whatever keyword that was, to extract the value out. That's fine. And it seems you can make constructor functions that simplify this process, which is good. You kind of need that as an accessor. Yeah, okay. SRL asked for that. Thanks, alternate vid. Okay, cool. Structs. Abstract types. Right. I think there's another cool thing we can do. Let me look at my list of notes as well, because alternate vid has some suggestions. I want to look at scripting. There's also a shell DSL that alternate vid had mentioned to me earlier. Take a quick look at that and see what that's about. So this would be the thing that would be worth comparing to Babashka, which Babashka is a shell scripting. Would you call it a dialect or just like a API for Clojure? It is a tool as well, so it's kind of a way to do scripting in Clojure-ish code. Yeah, running a process and getting its exit code, the sh run, running a process and board on error. This is just like a syntax to simplify writing scripts with Janet, it seems. Using Janet variables as arguments. Running a process with output as a string, that's cool. IO redirection, buffer new, you're sort of establishing a buffer to pass things between, okay. Pipelining, apparently it's possible to do pipelining. All right, that's cool. Oh, there's a match expression. Is that part of the language? Would that be under destructuring? Huh. Oh, okay. Did they just implement their own match just for fun? Or is there a library for that? Anyway, that could be interesting to anyone who wants to do scripting with a Lisp style language if you want a effectively a DSL to make scripting easier. Over Williams says Babashka is a Clojure interpreter. Okay, cool. Yeah, that makes sense. So yeah, it's not Clojure running on the JVM. It's a custom interpreter. Let me just look that up so that we got the right information and I'm not just talking a bunch of BS. Babashka Clojure. Babashka is using Graal VM to do, I guess, just-in-time compilation of Clojure code so it can be executed quickly with fast startup time. Yeah. And has a lot of other libraries to make it easier to write tasks, I'm guessing. Okay. Oh, the index. Pinmax says it's in the index.html file. It actually is in there. Let's see. The documentation index file. Oh, API index file. Okay. If I go here. Thank you. Okay, there's a macro. Pattern matching. Yeah, that's the good stuff. Community examples are there. Oh, nice. janetdocs.com. Sweet. This is kind of like what's that site? Is it Clojure Docs? Anyway, there's another website for Clojure that is kind of like this, where people can just sort of submit code snippets to show how to do certain tasks, which I think is kind of cool to have. All right, cool. So that is possible. Pattern matching is always nice to have, and also this is a good page to take a look at all the core API functions. So thanks to Pinmax for the suggestion on that. Got a lot of Twitch spam today. Great. Okay. Just kind of looking for something we could write that would be worthwhile to look at. Basic scripting common tasks. I mean, I think there must be, see, spawn. Not spawning threads. OS spawn. So there are OS functions. There's a whole library of OS functions. I kind of like the fact that it has OS/ as a kind of a namespace. So it's easy to grab those. Just want to see if there's a... Okay. All right, so you can get the architecture, change directory chmod, clock. Ah, okay. CPU count, current directory. Parsing something with peg. Yeah, I don't know what we would parse, though. I mean, I guess you could use the peg grammar for the language itself and just sort of show that. I thought about doing something socket related. Let's see, execute. Yeah, it might be too much for now. We only got about 25 minutes, let's say. What if can we use a peg grammar to do a command parser for, like, let's say a basic text adventure game? What if I just did that? So can I... Sandbox, that's cool. Standard in. How can I read from standard in? File read standard in line. Cool. Maybe we can do this, huh? So I'm gonna start a new exe project here. Let's see. JPM. What was it? New exe project. JPM new exe project. Janet Mud. Mud. Not really a mud. It's more of a text adventure. It could be a mud. I mean, we could write it like that, but let's not get ahead of ourselves just yet. All right, so I want to go to projects, code, Janet test, Janet Mud. Where is... Okay, we have Janet Mud. We have init.janet. Is that good? Okay, cool. That's fine. So if I have file read at standard in, I need to have a loop. Let's go back to the docs. Let's check out the loop macro. Looping. Because I don't have a range. I just want to be able to break. Can I break? There's a while somewhere too, I think. Flow. I saw a while loop. Yeah, while. Okay, cool. There needs to be a do while. Anyway. Hold on. Bindings. Is there a let? Okay, there's let. Built-in macro let that does multiple defs at once and introduces a scope. Great. Let, because I'm just so acclimated to let, I have to do it this way. So input, nil. Yeah, maybe. And then while, no, let's do this. While input, print the command was, and then input. Otherwise, we will print exiting. I don't really know if that's going to work. That's good enough for now, though. And we don't really need hello here either. Can I run this? Is there like a JPM run? JPM. Whoop. JPM. Save, REPL, rule, run. Run a rule. Custom rules. I don't know. Deps. Exec. Nope. Let's see. Where's the JPM docs? I got too many tabs open now. Run. JPM run. Run. Do I just need to run Janet itself? I could run JPM build. JPM, let's go into the Janet mud folder. JPM build. Need to do the CC equals GCC again. All right, cool. Then, what? Janet mud. And let me see how big that is. I'm actually kind of curious. LSAL build. That is, yeah, 1.3 megabytes, right? It's not too bad. Janet should be enough for now. Let's try it. So Janet mud, init.janet. Boo. Aha. Yeah, I never set input again. Also, I can't really do that again, can I? So what would be the right way to do this? I also didn't see anything about tail recursion. Where is tail recursion covered? Tail. No. There must be functions. All right, let's look at functions. Tail, recur. I don't know if the looping macro is better for this. I'm not really an expert on that. Probably not. But a recursive function could work pretty well. In fact, why not just do that? Yeah, don't really need a parameter for this. Def input, file read standard in line. Okay. Let me just go delete, copy this code here. And then I'm just going to call it again. Okay, process command. I hope this is going to work. Okay, boot, bar, buzz. Cool, that works. Okay, so we got that. Now, while should be outside of your let. Yeah. Yeah, well, I need to set it again. That's for sure. Yeah, I guess I could use a let inside. That makes sense. I don't really know how far tail recursion is going to go on this, but I'm hoping that they have implemented tail recursion so at least this form works, because this is the most essential form that should work. Now, we want to do some command handling. Let's take a look at the PEG stuff real quick. I'm just curious to see if we can write something for this. Whoops. Read the PEG documentation for more information. Filtering emails from a list or extracting data from a CSV file. PEGs are parsing expression grammars or another formalism for recognizing languages. Easier to write than a custom parser, more powerful than regular expressions. All right. Okay, so you can sort of recursively define the elements of the grammar. Makes sense. PEG match. And if it matches, it gives you information. How do you extract the info, though? And is this one? Okay, that's one rule. All right, gotcha. PEG text arguments. How do you capture data? Capture data if the text matches. Okay, so how do I capture? Okay, capture. Okay, cool. Capture specials will only push captures to the capture stack if their child pattern matches the text. Can you give me an example? Because I'm not... Okay, thank you. Okay, you got parenthesized elements, right? So let's just try it. Do I need to do anything special for this, or is it already built in? Def get command grammar. I don't know. Grammar. Now, what is this star? Star A, B, A. Interesting. Okay. Okay, let's do that. This is overkill for parsing this, but that's okay. And I imagine there's optionals as well that we could do. So then main would be get. Is that how that worked? Sequence. Okay, sequence. Pegular expressions. Janet.guide. I have not seen that site. That seems nice. Oh, I have seen this site recently. Janet's been floating around lately, and maybe it was alternate ved who reinserted it in my brain a week or two ago. Someone did. Star is shorthand for sequence. Okay. Let's see. Does not have blah, blah, blah. Okay, fine. Any one, sum in A. I want a specific sequence of things. Star matches all of its arguments in order. Great. So that's cool. Get, and then actually target. So yeah, this is super overkill. In fact, it's probably all be baked into this part here, but why not just do it this way? Hey, Alejandro. So any character, 1 byte, strings, match literally, no special characters. Okay, W does not include underscore, word character. All right. Hey, Summer. Okay, so range A to Z. Yeah, we could go with that. Does that work? Range AZ? You are showing up on the screen, just not yet. Patience. Okay, so it needs to be multiple of those, right? How do I get multiple? Oh, plus? No. Sum in a. Match strings literally and no special characters escape. Sum means one or more. Okay, sum, right? So sum range AZ. I'm guessing that's the right way to do it. Target. Who the hell knows? Let's see if this works. If peg match and the get command grammar, if I can spell grammar, input, and then recursively call, recursive loop. Extra quote in line 4, okay. Thank you, that is definitely wrong. Okay, there we go. You see me using my mouse there, huh? Bad. Foo. Nil. Get something. I think that did work. The capture's not working correctly. Get. Yeah, that didn't work. Get. Blah, 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 blah. Okay, so it did actually work. Now, capture. There's an arrow. Alias for capture. Okay, so we can explicitly request that some part be captured. So I'm guessing that if I just do this. Oops. Where is it? There we go. No. It's closed here. Get foo. Boom. All right. So, that's cool. I mean, it's better than writing a parsing system yourself for commands. Omar says, is there a geyser or slime-like connection to the REPL for Janet? Probably not. Let's see. Emacs Janet REPL. Interactive Janet mode. It's by Serial Dev. That name sounds familiar. It appears it might work. Yeah, you can eval regions, lines, and buffers into the REPL. So that's, you know, probably the basic work that's needed for that. Summer says, here's an idea for another time, how to set up a Python IDE in Emacs. I did that a long time ago. Okay, so that's a basic example. It's nice to see that this is in there. I think that if someone were to build a more comprehensive understanding of using this PEG system for parsing, you could probably do some pretty interesting stuff without having to write a bunch of custom bespoke parsing code for mundane things like, you know, a MUD command line parser. You could probably also, you know, make a macro to make it easier to define MUD commands, but that's neither here nor there. My thoughts so far. I think it's interesting that we've kind of started from scratch in a few different ways with this language where, you know, it looks like a Lisp, looks like Clojure. It's not really exactly a traditional Lisp because certain things are different. I mean, you're not really dealing with the same core data structures as you would be in Scheme or Common Lisp, like const cells for making lists and having basically all of your code's data structures be built on that, at least, you know, in the basics. But when it comes to writing practical code, it's not as important, I think, to have that. I mean, for Scheme, it makes a lot of sense to be able to use const cells for things because const cells and recursion kind of go hand in hand when it comes to processing lists of items, because a recursion is effectively breaking up a problem into subproblems, and a list made out of const cells is making smaller lists out of bigger lists by getting the rest of the list. So there is some connection there. I'm thinking of a more flowery word for that, but didn't come to me. So I don't care too much that it's not a traditional Lisp from that perspective. It's nice to have things like, you know, easy hash tables that have built-in syntax. Those of you who've used Clojure are pretty familiar with this way of doing things. it's harder to use things like dictionaries or hash tables in Scheme because they're not built into the core spec. There are extensions for that, but it's not really like idiomatic in Scheme to be using hash tables quite as much. You tend to use A-lists more, which are not as efficient by any means, or record types, which are like another thing entirely. However, record types and structs and stuff in Scheme are pretty efficient because they are kind of turned into vectors under the covers, and you're using constant time access for the fields. I digress. The API seems to be pretty nicely designed. I mean, it's nice to have these built-in core APIs that have the namespace / some function. It seems to be done in a way where a person could come from another language, or like, let's say a mature ecosystem, like, you know, Go, JavaScript, or let's say Node.js, Python, etc., and get your bearings probably a lot more easily than you would in Scheme or Common Lisp, because you have different terminology for common things, like let's say ports in Scheme for file descriptors, or, you know, just handling files in general. So having a nicely designed core API that is more like what a person would expect to look for is nice. Kind of a lot of support for various different things that you would want. Clearly, it is possible to write a program that, let's see, LSLH, is that what, who was it said that? Is it Omar? Anyway, so LSLH build. So the binary for this super small program is only 1 megabyte, which to me is pretty good for, you know, smallness sake. So it's not like a really thick runtime where you have to compile in a bunch of stuff to have a standalone application. You can get a standalone application with some Lispy code written and compiled and deployed without a whole lot of overhead. I like that. That was kind of what I was going for with Mesh as well, where what I want is a Scheme-like language, as close to Scheme as possible, but maybe with some better design aspects, where I could make standalone applications really easily with some built-in tools for the language that are small, that don't have a lot of, you know, bloat added to them, that have dependencies that can be pulled down from Git repositories and compiled in. So you've got all the bytecode for the modules kind of like sucked into the executable, so you don't have to have like library files hanging around effectively. It's pretty nice from that perspective. I mean, I would actually use this. I would need to get a little bit more familiar with the language and try it out on some real projects first, but there's a lot of potential here. What really matters in the end is stability and performance for long-term use. I mean, anybody can really get familiar with a language that has a good core API set. Like if it has a good core API set and a good feature set that you feel comfortable writing code in, you can write a lot of programs with that. Especially if you have the ability to access C libraries that have a lot of stuff in those. Janet's set up well for that, both on the dynamic side and writing C wrappers that plug in directly to Janet. So like the flexibility, the practical applicability of this is pretty high. So I don't know, like it feels pretty useful. It feels like you could do some, you know, meaningful stuff with this. I'm gonna keep my eye on it because I am looking for a language like this. Basically, I don't want a language that requires me to have a runtime shipped on the machine. I want standalone binaries, smaller standalone binaries, native access, the ability to compile to the browser, which obviously there's already stuff in there for compiling to WebAssembly for this, so you could make a browser game if you wanted to. Small tools that you want to distribute to other people, obviously you can make that with this across all platforms because it works on macOS, Windows, and Linux. So you've got cross-platform applicability, you've got, you know, native library access, you've got an ecosystem that you can pull in things from Git repositories, which is great for making it easy to pull things in without having to have like some external package repository, let's say. However, it seems that it's possible for you to have Janet packages be packaged in a Linux distro. So you could imagine there'd be Geeks packages for some Janet dependencies. It's not really infeasible because I think there's the JPM path. There's some environment variable you can set that dictates where it expects all the dependency packages to have been installed. So, you know, that will work kind of right away with Geeks if Geeks was set up for that. So I don't know. All in all, I think it ticks a lot of boxes for me. I think it could probably be more... What's the right word? Effective might be the right word. It could be more effective for practical coding than Scheme could be. With Scheme, you're definitely using more primitive data structures and algorithms. I like that sometimes. You know, it's kind of, you know, intellectually stimulating to me, but at the same time, sometimes you just want to write some code and get it done. And I think using hash tables as a core data structure helps you to do that a lot more effectively than shoveling around alias and Scheme all the time. Over Williams says that 1 megabyte is basically the whole Janet VM and a pickled image of the runtime state that it should pick up with. Yeah, that's great. So what Over William is saying is that the executable that comes out at the end is only pulling in the code that the program is using. Hey, Ramses. Ramses says Jank versus Janet. Is Jank a different language? Jank, Janet. Jank language. Is that real? Jank programming language. Clojure dialect hosted on LLVM. I would just skip LLVM entirely. I haven't seen this before. Don't really know anything about it. It looks Clojure-ish, sure. But I just, man, LLVM, I'm not sure. It's too big of a dependency. It's nice if you can just have your own runtime like it seems that Janet does. I think you can get farther with that. Obviously, LLVM is industrial grade, but like I said, it's pretty heavy. Okay, well, I hope that was a useful run through of Janet. I know that it was kind of ambling around. You know, we kind of went through the documentation a bit, tried to write a little bit of code, had some hiccups with the building of JPM, the package manager, but we got through that and we were able to run some code. I don't know. I think it was fairly successful from just a basic trial standpoint. It would have been nice if we had got the Raylib stuff working, but that was fully the responsibility of Geeks, I think, just not having things set up correctly. If I had spent probably another 15 minutes, I probably would have gotten it working, but is it worth it? I don't know. I think it was cool to get to see the PEG stuff a little bit to get a sense for how that fits into the bigger picture. I mean, for people who are doing automation and scripting, something like this could be quite useful for data processing, I think. So having PEG built into the language and having kind of a more coherent way to describe the patterns like this is pretty nice. Haven't really seen that very often. Yeah, I don't know. Overall, I like it. Alternate Ved, I would be interested to hear more of your thoughts on it, since it seems you have spent more time with it. But for me, I think it's pretty interesting. I'm mostly like a Scheme enthusiast. Obviously, Lisp enthusiast too, but I've been spending most of my time with Scheme the last few years. But the conciseness, I would say, of the syntax and some of the features here are also appealing to me, especially for things like game development and web app development. So there's certainly some possibilities there, I think. Any last thoughts or questions before we shut the stream down today? Benoit says, isn't ELISP more CL than Scheme? Of course. But I don't really, you know, I write Emacs Lisp to configure Emacs, but I literally just ignore the fact that I'm writing code at that point because it feels like configuration. So I don't really treat that in my mind as like a legit programming language. I ignore the fact that I'm using it. And it doesn't really feel necessarily like Common Lisp to me because it feels, you know, simpler. If I were to use like the CL lib stuff, it probably would feel more like Common Lisp. Alternate Vez says, not a lot, I'm still exploring, but from what I've learned and saw, it looks really interesting. Yeah, it is pretty interesting. I've heard about Janet for a while now, and I've kind of dismissed it a little bit because I've kind of been I've been avoiding Clojure-related things for a while, but this is Fennel kind of got me back into thinking about using a language like this, and this language definitely is more in my wheelhouse, let's say. Like this is more of the kind of thing I want to be doing. Alternate Vet says, seems like a great tool for scripts, automation, CLI helpers, quick prototyping. Yeah, definitely. I mean, things that you need to do surrounding the other work that you do, or maybe building your own bespoke tools. This can be pretty useful for that, especially because you can compile those as applications and not have to run them as scripts. That'd be pretty awesome. Benoit says, Lisp is so natural he doesn't see it. Well, I mean, that's what I'm mainly looking at these days. I can't speak anymore. Omar says, I was looking for Lisp to explore, and now I plan to include Janet as well in the list. Yeah, Janet's cool. I will probably look at it a bit more. I needed something to pique my curiosity and get me back into programming a little bit more, so this is a good opportunity. Okay, folks, as always, thank you all very much for your time and attention today. I hope it was useful for you. Leave a comment on the recording of the video if you have any thoughts. Subscribe to the channel if you watched this far. If you've watched this far, you must really like Lisp, because most people don't watch the end of the streams, stream recordings. So subscribe to the channel if you want, and hopefully next week we'll have another video out about org mode. So until next time, I hope you all have a great weekend, and happy hacking. We'll see you.